Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Commander with the weekly comic book roundup. Now we're moving on, having already covered this week's X-Men books and this week's miscellaneous Marvel books. We're moving on to this week's Avengers books and this week's Empyre tie-in. As there's only one. Just kicking things off with Hawkeye Freefall, number 6. Where we left off, Hawkeye was pretty much on his own. Night Nurse had pretty much said, we're done. He had once again poked the bear that is the Hood. And to make matters worse, Bullseye, who had been hired by the Hood to find out who Ronan was, had managed to track Hawkeye down to where he was staying and really badly injured Bryce, the hacker that was working with Hawkeye, and basically left a message for Hawkeye as well as his costume while Bullseye took the Ronin suit. The issue begins in Bensonhurst at 5 a.m. Ronan standing above a few couple guys with arrows in them on the street. Upon it, he misses using a bow. It's so much more civilized. One of the guys that's been stuck with arrows mentions that apparently Ronan shot him in the junk, and then Ronan uses his foot to snap the guy's neck. And Captain America shows up, telling Ronan that's enough. Claiming he gave Clint the benefit of the doubt here as a friend. But yeah, that's over with. Ronan turns on him fires an arrow into his chest, saying no thanks. Back at the Fortress of Solid Dudes, Hawkeye's place, 2 hours previously, Hawkeye's talking to Bryce, who's got a ton of arrows sticking out of him, saying he's going to be okay and going to get him to a hospital. But Bryce says that can't do hospitals. He's done things. He can't go to a hospital. So Clint takes in the Night Nurse. Who is not happy to see Clint at all, and explains that the two of them are going to have a big talk when she's done taking care of Bryce. Half an hour later, she comes out and explains that his wounds were too severe. The coroner's on his way, but basically tells him that Clint let Bryce die instead of letting the police see him. While she goes on, Clint's tuned her out, wondering how he finds Bullseye, realizing if he's going out as Ronan, he definitely means to be seen. And knowing Bullseye, it's not going to take long for people to notice. It comes back to just as Night Nurse says that she doesn't know Clint anymore, and he asks how the hell he thinks he feels, or she thinks he feels. And as he leaves, he says that she wanted him out of his life, and so he says he's out, and he's sorry, and thanks for trying. Back at his place, he's ignoring calls. 14 of them so far. There's also some texts. Jessica Drew. You hear about Steve? John/Jack, presumably U.S. agent. You shoot me, you stupid. Natasha, Black Widow. We need to talk. Falcon, old one. Cap's in the hospital. Did you? Danny Rand. Where you at? Kate Bishop. Call me. Quentin Quire. Heard a funny rumor, old man. Turk. Ronan spotted near Hudson Yards. Thought you'd want to know. And so Clint puts on Bullseye's suit and goes, man, at 6:54 a.m. is at the Hudson Rail Yards. Bow to bow with Ronan. Well, in this case, Bullseye as Ronan. And one of the train engineers between the two of them. In fact, the two of them even managed to knock their arrows out of the air. Bullseye claims that they're close to evenly matched. Only his aim's a little better. Of course, Bullseye asks how Bryce is, knowing full well that Bryce is likely dead. And then Hawkeye hits him with one of his trick arrows, and leading to Hawkeye stating that, not sure if Bullseye's aim is better than his, but you know what beats aim every time? Trick arrows. With another one blowing up beside Bullseye. Of course, cops are on the scene now, and he's got Bullseye dead to rights up against the wall. And of course, Hawkeye is told to drop his weapon, his bow, and he fires the arrows he's got up into the air. And they knock the two cops out. And Hawkeye basically pins Bullseye to a wall with arrows. Though Bullseye tells him that, both the Skrull imposter and the hacker rolled on Clint so quick once they started bleeding. And so Clint definitely needs a better class of sidekick. But he learns that the Hood has put a price on Clint's head. $3 million if he doesn't turn himself in by 9. Bullseye claims it's enough that everyone's going to come after him. And he has all the evidence. He's going to tell the whole world that Hawkeye's Ronan. And he says that he'll tell them himself. Cut to the next morning as both Clint and the Hood both get up and get ready for the day. At around 9, a handful of villains have appeared at the Hood's office. Across town, at the Alethea Bank, Hawkeye's shown up, claiming he will be everyone's friendly neighborhood bank robber, but he's not here for their money. He's here for Parker Robbins, man, who owns the bank. About 9:42, everyone's waiting. Among the assembled villains are Tombstone, Shocker, a couple of the Enforcers, Rhino, Mr. Fear, and Armadillo. The Hood's manservant Armand is trying to pass along a message to the Hood, but, well, yeah, not right now. And Rhino noticed there's a cab pulling up outside. It's Hawkeye. who explains that Bullseye's nailed to a D train on 32nd and 10th if Hood's looking for him. The two of them have a bit of banter, and, well, apparently that's what Armand was trying to tell the Hood, that Hawkeye robbed the bank this morning, and since everyone saw him do so, the blackmail isn't going to work. Hawkeye then tells the assembled villains that they can split what's in the bag if they don't help the Hood. And so the two of them go hand to hand. It's actually kind of an even match. Hawkeye's got some skill when it comes to hand-to-hand fighting, but yeah, he does also add the one thing he's got over the Hood is the fact that he's got nothing to lose anymore. And so the Hood lets the demon in the cloak take over. He figures that the Hood figures Hawkeye's suicidal. And this was a cry for help. I mean, no, he's not going to be Hawkeye's noose. These people do that for him. And again, Hawkeye tells him, with what money? So Hood goes for the bag and opens it. And a demon comes out and swipes the Hood's their cloak. And Hawkeye explains that he gave the $3 million to Count Neferi on the way over. Turns out Neferi didn't like the way Hood ended things with his daughter, and he knew a demon who wanted the Hood's cloak. And without the magic cloak, he's just another dumbass with delusions of grandeur. Just like Clint. So, Hood pulls a gun, and, yeah. Hawkeye bum rushes him out through a window. Also, during the fight, which one was Shocker? Yeah. I think it's Fancy Dan of the Enforcers puts $50 on Hawkeye with Shocker. As the villains leave the building, they hear sirens and realize that since the cops are coming, they should probably beat it. Ox makes a suggestion that maybe they ought to kill Hawkeye first. But Dan says, nah, let him go. He's one of them now. He doesn't know it yet. And that is where the series ends. Now, this next book I was actually planning to do first because, well, alphabetical order. I'm a sucker for things like alphabetical order. But it does kind of feel like it takes place after Freefall, so chronology's sake. So we move on to Black Widow #1. Well, I fixed my Winter Soldier figure. Later, jerk. Alright, so Black Widow #1. That's right. The third first issue Natasha has had in the last year and a half. Or so. Alright, so we begin in Manhattan. Natasha's in an elevator, almost there, being told by her handler that, no wet work, this needs to be clean. So she's, okay, that's fine. As she gets off the elevator, the power is cut. And it does appear that Hawkeye is working with her as she mows through a hallway full of goons in the dark. And the lock on the door is blown. Hawkeye blows the lock on the door. Natasha gets in, gets Stevie out of the safe, and makes her way across town. Goes hoping that, opining that Clint's probably still a little pissed at her. Thinking maybe, either because of the missions that, leaving him out of missions with Bucky, or because she called him soft, and either way, she should make things right with him. Life's too short. When she arrives on the rooftop, however, Clint's not there. Steve, however, is, and tries to cover for him, for Clint, trying to say that, Clint had to go. So they talk, and turns out the loot was a hard drive, which he gives to Steve and asks what's on it. And he doesn't know, but he got a heads up from an old source, and in time they'll see if there's any merit to it. And he also apologizes for sending her in alone, but nobody leaves no trace like her. And she says it's almost felt like old times, and Steve says it did, and she had the good old days, but when were those really? And Steve kind of says he doesn't know, and he can remember some. And she tells him she can always count on Steve for that. And as Cap offers her a ride, she leaves. Apparently he hates when she does that, though she claims he loves it. She gets home, however, she realizes that someone's in her home again. So she makes her way in, and yep, simple spot, old school spy nonsense. A bit of tape on the door frame with a strand of hair. You find broken tape or missing hair, and you've got problems. Well, the tape's broken. So she sneaks in through. She tries to sneak in through a window. As she does, however, she gets tranked and plummets from the building. 3 months later in San Francisco, at a construction site, Nat shows up with plans and coffee. She's running a bit late. And she miraculously manages to save the cup holder from, falling off the in-construction building onto the ground. Scaring the shit out of everybody in doing so. Then she leaves, and on her way home, she calls someone. She walks by a television newscast, and also a bike on display at a car dealership. In Bed-Stuy, Hawkeye's place, Clint's eating pizza and watching the news, and sees Black Widow. Takes a picture. Calls Bucky, who simply enters and says, I'm busy. He tries to interrupt, and so he texts the picture. 5 seconds later, it's her. They both admit that they haven't heard from her in 3 months. They are, But Clint suggests that him and Bucky go check on her. Though Bucky says, didn't we just do this? And Clint says, yes, but it'll be different this time. It'll be different. For one thing, they already know where she is. So it turns out that Widow bought the motorcycle, drives through San Francisco, gets home, with dinner, and apparently madly in love with the man whose house she's at. However, all is not as it seems, as 47 days in, apparently we're now 47 days into something, some plan of Arcade's. He asks whoever's backing him, when can we kill the Black Widow? And that is where the issue ends. Which then brings us to a holdout from last week, iWolverine 2020. The last of the Iron Man 2020 tie-ins. Where we left off in issue 1, Albert had gone to Madripoor to find LCD, and also to deal with Donald Pierce. Well, while looking for LCD and Pierce, Albert pissed off, the entirety of Madripoor's criminal underworld, which is saying quite a bit. The only other person I can think of who's managed to ever piss off the entirety of Madripoor's underworld actually looks just like Albert, but when in Madripoor tends to wear an eye patch. So, downtown Madripoor, the high street is near deserted as the Reavers make their way to the airport, which is the only way off the island, unless you want to get on a container ship. If Albert and LCD are on their way, well, they got to make it through the Vladivostok Mafia first. Well, it seems like that's not too much of a problem for the two of them. Though Albert does have to remind LCD that heads are not pickle jar lids. If you twist them too far, they pop off. Though, she kind of feels like that's the point. The Vladivostok boys have some heavy firepower, which is not doing much against Albert and LCD. Especially when LCD can grab an RPG in mid-air and turn it around, and basically have it change directions. So at the airport, the Reavers show up, explain, yes, there are. No, they're not going to come into the terminal. But they're there to make sure to reclaim some property of Pierce's that somebody's smuggled out of the country. And Albert and LCD end up in J Dragon territory. Yeah, that goes about. One guy comes up with a flamethrower. They still get some of the heavy ordnance from the Russians, so Albert fires an RPG at the guy, blowing him and his flamethrower up. Apparently jellied gasoline splashes all over the place. At the airport, Pierce is setting up a high-velocity railgun for when Albert and LCD arrive. On the J-Town stretch of High Street, well, now it's time for Albert and LCD to deal with Kimura. They've got plenty of weaponry now. They've taken the one of the Jeeps from the Jade Dragons. The Jeep takes heavy fire and plows right through the limo. LCD's picked up a chainsaw from within the Jeep and asked for Albert to throw her. And basically makes a massive mess of things. But the leader, the Yakuza boss, orders all of his men back as there's a personal grudge, and he will not allow his loyal soldiers to shed more blood in his stead. And so, of course, the whole thing is that he's more worried about the fact that LCD's bookkeeping data is in her, or that is the leader. The leader of Kimura himself is worried about LCD having all his bookkeeping information in her head. And but Albert does say, "Hey, is there no path to resolve this grudge between us without the termination of sentient entities?" And LCD chimes in that she's already erased all his bookkeeping data. And so with that, Kimura decides they can arrive at an honorable accord. He explains that they cannot leave Madripoor through the passenger terminal, as Pearson's Reavers await him there with considerable firepower. They can facilitate his departure, but their customs require a penance of sorts. And it does appear that the penance was one of his pinkies. And so the limo arrives at the airport and is blasted to pieces by the Reavers, while Kimura ships a shipment of slot machines to Macau. A shipment of slot machine parts being actually Albert and LCD. As the Reavers look through the wreckage and realize that Albert and LCD were not in the vehicle they destroyed as the plane leaves. And that is where the issue ends. And bear in mind also that we saw Albert and LCD briefly in the during the massive battle that Tony engineered for Arno. But moving on to Avengers of the Wasteland, number 5. Where we left off, it turns out that Ant-Man, Dwight, had actually kind of sort of betrayed the team. That Doom and his people were getting their intel on where the team was going through Ant-Man, as Doom had captured all of the villagers in the village he was in and was holding them hostage. So now they decided to take the fight to Doom. So we begin in New Latveria, formerly known as New Babylon, formerly known as New York City. It's apparently time for Doom to address the masses in Times Square. Captain America, the Avengers Captain America, basically give them a rundown of what's going on. And their plan is to let Doom give his speech and everything, and then follow his ride home, and then take him out quietly. But they've been discovered. And Doom basically Doom makes it clear he's spoiling for a fight. Accusing them of killing Ultron and Strucker and Count Nefaria and Dr. Octopus, when in fact, as we saw in previous issues, it was Doom that killed them. And so he orders his Doombots to attack them, kill them in fact, and so they're trying to deal with them, but it's not easy. And Doom explains that he killed the villagers from Dwight's village. But Vision and Hulk team up. They've got an idea how to stop the Doombots. Doom seems to be getting the upper hand constantly, but I mean he's Doom. I mean he's power, experience, but he's also coughing a lot. And then the Doombots stop. As Bruce and Vision have reprogrammed them all. And so Dwight attacks Doom. Until Viv stops him. Explaining that, Doom's sick. Like, physically ill. Upon actually being able to scan him, turns out he has cancer. The doctor supposes he has less than 6 months, and he suggests that he use the time to tie up any loose ends and sort out any unfinished business. So Doom killed the other villains that helped him take over the world, and actually wanted a team of heroes to come after him, so he could have a glorious death. He initially tried to recreate the Fantastic Four, but that didn't work. Multiple times over. And he wants them to kill him. Grant, Team Captain America, agrees, but Thor's against it, explaining, you kill him, that gives Doom what he wants. If Dwight doesn't kill him, then he shows the world they're about something else. Mercy and peace are both possible. And you show the world there's hope. So Dwight decides to leave the team, explaining that sometimes in order to protect those who can't protect themselves, you need to be ready to make the bigger sacrifice for the greater good. And he can't have Danny stopping him every time, not when their innocent lives on the line. Grant also says that, says Dwight's right, and while the people need Danny's compassion, sometimes that's not going to be enough. And when it's not, him and Dwight will be there. And so Bruce, Danny, and Viv decide that it's time to rebuild. That is where the series ends. Looks like that's probably going to be the last of the Wasteland-based Marvel books for at least a while. But we now come to our last book for the video, Empyre number 6. Where we left off, the Kree Skrull Pyre was about to go off. It was about to basically turn the sun into a massive weapon that would likely wipe out all life on Earth. And at the same time, the Kotati had managed to plant the Death Blossom in the Vibranium Mound. Reed Richards and Tony Stark realized they had less than 10 minutes to save the world twice over. Also, Hulk had become possessed by the Kotati back in the first issue and was handing the thing his ass. So, at Avengers Mountain, Reed Richards is putting on the armor that Tony made for him while they discuss just what's been going on. The Pyre's been activated. There's the death blossoms have been planted in vibranium enriched soil. Yeah, this is not looking good. They can't. Something is. They don't know what's going on the flagship, but they figure some kind of violent political intrigue. And but Reed's mission is to stop the Death Blossom, while Tony is going to put the Sun in a suit. He also explains that he, being in a cave of scraps is the place that he's most like Tony Stark. That's the place where Tony Stark was born. In New York, we get it. It turns out that the Omniwave Protector has been utilized by the priests of Pama. So and they also they managed to get both Jovan and Nakala, and are going to use all the knowledge they have of the Kree Skrull War to basically destroy the Alliance. And so, the world over, and even on the flagship, the two turn on one another. And Captain Glory ends up admitting that, yeah, that is not Hulkling on claiming to be Emperor. Super Skrull goes after Captain Glory. The Kree and the Skrull are fighting. Morgan the Mystic feels like she's being torn in two because of the inhibitor mask that Hulkling's wearing. Though he's not affected by it. Also, Glory's comments about basically outing that yes, that is an imposter. Well, it's apparently the hammer caught it. So, anyways, the plan becomes that Wiccan will teleport with atmosphere, Captain Marvel and Human Torch to right by the sun. Human Torch can control fire, and Captain Marvel can redirect it, can manipulate energy. So, that's the plan there. In Lake Victoria, the Kotati possessed Hulk is, like I said, handing Ben Grimm his rock-covered ass. And Mantis. It's not even close. But Invisible One has an epiphany. They're trying to fight her individually rather than combining forces. So, Invisible Woman asks that Mantis use her telepathy to block Invisible Woman's pain and fatigue, the body's warning systems. Then we can see just how hard Sue can push. Back in New York, they're trying to turn off the Omniwave projector, but the head priest says it can't be stopped. It pulls the children's darkest memories from them and forces them all upon every Kree and Skrull in existence. And so, Valeria tries to convince Jovan and Nakala to remember the time they had to work together. back at Lake Victoria, Mantis blocks out the pain and fatigue, and manages to get Hulk off of Ben for a moment. But Valeria manages to convince Jovan and Nakala to think of other things than fighting each other. And then Invisible Woman's trying to hold off Hulk, or She-Hulk, but the Kotati possessed She-Hulk, claiming that Hulk is dead and her physical form is theirs, and it will end them. However, it says something strange. Through the door, she can see. And so then all the Skrulls and Kree come back together, realizing they were wrong to fight one another. And Jen's back to normal, claiming she saw something, a door, but she doesn't remember. But she's back, and she's ready to fight. On the flagship, Captain Glory admits that yes, it's Raquel, as Empress Raquel is the took Hulkling's place, and intended in fact to reveal the ruse after the victory over the Kotati to break the alliance apart, because he wanted the war back. He then says there are greater things to live for. Raquel mentions that, Glory was bred to be without guilt. Hulkling then has Mergen teleport Captain Glory and Super Skrull to Billy and to Wiccan and the others, because they'll need the help. And Mergen asks, well, what about you, Emperor? And he says that him and his grandmother are going to have a conversation about power and responsibility and what makes a king. In Wakanda, though, yes, Black Panther was run through by swordsmen, he survived, explaining that he's a master of shadow combat, his own unique blend of martial arts. Using the techniques, he slowed his heartbeat to almost nothing, reducing blood loss until his ceremonial armor could patch his wounds. And apparently, Koi's control of the plants isn't working. And Mr. Fantastic has arrived in his fantastic iron armor, and explains that him and Tony Stark have been studying bioacoustics, and that the very frequencies that the suit emits are the ones that affect plants. Well, it can't block his Koi's telepathic control. It has enough noise to distract the plants. So Koi goes after Reed as the Avengers show up, and Thing and Invisible Woman. Captain America says that he's leading the combined Kree, Skrull, and Earth forces and the Avengers, and he's ordering Koi to stand down or face the consequences, adding he's had a long day, and it would not be wise for Koi to make him say it again. Meanwhile, Tony is communicating with Captain Marvel, walking her through his plan, and he's going to use Reed Richards' Fantastic Four suit made of unstable molecules. molecules designed to adapt even to nova heat. And they can be programmed like nanomachines, programmed to replicate and then attack those denser elements of the balance of the sword. Remove the iron, remove the problem. And he basically teleports the suit into the sun after, reprogramming the unstable molecules. And Human Torch mentions that he can actually feel the sun cooling back down. Back on the flagship, Hulkling has his family reunion with his grandmother. It does not go well. In fact, very promptly comes to blows, and she knocks the inhibitor mask off of him, claiming that the destruction of Earth would have proven Hulkling's strength, forged the Alliance in fire, and now the Alliance only see weakness. And he claims that actually it's called kindness, and it should never be mistaken for weakness, as he slams the inhibitor mask on her. He adds that leadership is not cruelty. Committing atrocities against your own people does not show strength. What does show strength is working to lift them up, fighting to make things better, for as long as the fight goes on. And in Wakanda, the Avengers are facing off against the Gotati, and they appear to be winning. Also, Thor is now the Gaia's son. I think there was supposed to be a Thor tie-in series that just got canceled because of, recent events. But he basically blocks the Kotati sorcerers and all their power, and yeah. Meanwhile, Swordsman and Black Panther duel, and Black Panther does come out on top. And Koi goes to his father's defense, only to be taken hostage by him. But Black Panther manages to run through Swordsman, explaining that, Swordsman died in Avenger. And that the man calling himself Kotati calling himself Swordsman, he was no Jacques Duquesne. And hopefully that comforts the Kotati in the hour of his death, as he's run through and stuck to the remains of the Death Blossom, destroying it. The Kotati attack is over. Mantis tries to get her son to, to renounce the violent ways. It's mentioned that the Death Blossom on the moon was taken care of already by the X-Men. However, Koi just feels further justified by everything, as he's taken prisoner. The surrender of the Kotati forces being accepted by the Kree Skrull forces. There's no dissension in the ranks, and they've developed a new respect for one another and for the heroes of Earth. And Reed mentions it seems like the Earth is about to enter a new age of space with new challenges and new dangers. And he kind of worries that perhaps Koi is the future. However, the sword is prompt as Black Panther interjects, saying that perhaps he is, but there are others who hold the new future in their hands, and he has great faith in them. As he's saying this, Hulkling has called his sword back to him aboard the Alliance flagship, flanked by Captain Marvel, Human Torch, the Royal Consort Wiccan, Captain Glory, and Colrit, as well as Mergen the Mystic, with both Kree and Skrull cheering him on. And that is where Empyre ends. The remaining tie-ins are actually going to all be fall. I think there's a Fantastic Four tie-in issue still to come, and then there's some Fallout one-shots. Basically, kind of, okay, here's the aftermath. We're setting up the new status quo that'll last for about 6 weeks. And that is it for this video. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying live long and rock hard.